Hi everyone, my name is Andra Stanoiu and you're listening to the Healthy Debate Show on UK Health Radio and podcast. Have you ever wondered if the heart has intelligence? Studies showing the importance of the heart in the heart-brain system have actually been around for decades, and the research continues to accumulate. The heart has its own intelligence, and its own neurological system and electromagnetic field are actually much larger and more powerful than the brains. Dr. Mădălina, a leading cardiologist at the Swedish Medical Center, has developed the Heart Q method alongside with her husband. And this method is guiding people to reconnect with their authentic selves and activate their heart intelligence in order to live a heart-centered, aligned, and fulfilling life. Hi, Mădălina. Welcome to the Healthy Debate Show. How are you today?
I am doing wonderful, Andra. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so curious about this topic. I've never talked about intelligence of the heart, and hopefully you can bring a bit more clarity for myself and for everyone that's listening. But before we start discussing about heart intelligence and your method that you've developed alongside your husband, please tell us a bit about your journey. How did you become a cardiologist first, and then probably this includes a bit of a story around your passion for heart. And then we'll slowly, hopefully transition towards your current passion, which is heart intelligence. So, yeah, the stage is all yours, Mădălina. We're listening.
Thank you so much, Andra. Yeah, this is something I am so incredibly passionate about. And so everything for me started about, I was always pulled to the space of the heart. As long as I can remember, there was something about the heart and medicine and healing. It was something that I was pulled and I loved. I became a cardiologist, but then what was happening up about 10 years ago or so, I was living life as a really busy, successful cardiologist. And, I had 2 daughters, my husband, and cardiology is very difficult. There's emergencies and stresses and, basically was living life in a survival mode, waking up, morning till night, working, emergencies, fast-paced treadmill. Living almost like as a schedule, like there was barely any space for me and trying to serve everyone, putting pressure on myself to do everything, go above and beyond, and, living from all kinds of, patterns, workaholism, overachiever, perfectionist, people pleaser, yes sayer, but really in a lot of self-denial because it was just, quote, no time for me, right? And I was really good at doing that. I was really good at it. And one of the ways, the thing that kept me going, that was my technique, was running. Running was something that I used so that I can keep running in this matrix, keep running in my life, keep succeeding in what, was told, what was considered to be the successful way to be. And then something happened about 10 years ago in this crazy life of mine. Something happened that completely changed my life, the trajectory of my life. And what happened is I went for a run, and my usual run, and I developed this really severe back pain. I thought it'd be something that would just kind of go away and it would be nothing, but it turns out that this pain would not go away. And here I was, with my medicine scientific approach, not understanding why is this pain not going away. I mean, I was barely able to walk. So I went from being this really fit person, running around, doing everything, to barely being able to walk. And I couldn't find a cure, and I couldn't understand why it was happening. So this was going on for some time. And then what this ended up turning into is something much deeper, because I ended up going to some kind of a state of an existential crisis or a midlife crisis where I didn't understand all these emotions that I had been suppressing and not facing about me and my life. They were just flooding me and I didn't know how to deal with it. And so here I was. And then basically what ended up happening is what I thought was the worst thing that happened to me turned out to be the best thing that happened to me, because I was so, spending my time trying to heal other people's hearts, but I hadn't really, healed my own. And so what happened is somehow, after 1 year of, really suffering, having no answers and just getting worse and feeling stuck and feeling so unhappy, something happened where I got a book by Louise Hay called You Can Heal Your Life, and Wayne Dyer. And then I just really started going within myself. And I realized that what life wanted me to do, because I wasn't doing it, it was really meant for me to be still and stop all the doing and running in life and start being in my life, which is something I hadn't really done before. And so then I started like bringing all my passion and excitement that I was bringing outside of me, and I brought it inside of me. So it's like I kind of went inside of me and I turned the lights on and I said, oh my God, like, who am I? What is my purpose in life? What am I here to do? Who am I beneath all these layers and patterns and all of that? So that was the journey where I started going really deep within myself in a state of beingness and just really becoming passionate about that. And so what I basically spent, years, trying to understand who I was, realizing there was so much healing that I needed to do from all the, childhood trauma, did all kinds of experiences and immersions and workshops in all kinds of realms of consciousness, of the heart, of spirituality and energy healing and psychology. And what I ended up realizing after this journey of mine is that, number one, I had been living life not authentically, not from my heart. I had been living life from this unconscious programming, from my nervous system, all these things that had to do with limiting beliefs and conditioned patternings, and all that had to do with, old trauma that was unhealed, that had to do with me being disconnected from my heart, which is what happened early on in childhood. And so because of stuff that happened, I ended up leaving myself, leaving my heart, and living in my mind, living in the nervous system. And so then there was all this healing that I needed to go through and to heal. And then that's what brought me into my heart and realizing that the reason that I was suffering, the reason that I was not in my authentic self, the reason that I was so unhappy and unfulfilled is because I had created a misalignment. I was not living from my heart. I was not living from my truth. I was not living from my wholeness. And then I started really going into my heart and really reconnecting and experiencing who I really was, my wholeness, and, spirituality, meditation, started really tuning into my heart intelligence, my authentic self, my truth. And then from that point on, my whole life changed forever. And I started living life and creating my life no longer from the unconscious programming and the nervous system, which is just creates, unease and disease and problems, and really tuning into the consciousness and intelligence of my heart and letting that be the guide of how I live my life. And then after having had this experience, it became my deepest passion to bring it out in others, to help people to also reconnect with their own hearts and really kind of remember and recognize and experience their own wholeness, their own truth, their own vitality, their own passion for who they really are beneath all of these layers. And that's what now I am doing. And this is now what I'm so passionate about and what I'm bringing out into the world and what I feel that true healing is really all about.
Mădălina, you do have a fascinating story, and I'm really pleased to hear that. Definitely you sound like you found your path now, but I do have a few questions. I want to know if after this healing journey, your physical pain disappeared. So that's one thing. And then I'm curious to see if you're still practicing cardiology or you've completely shifted your existence to being a coach or working more towards supporting others.
Yeah, so this is such a fascinating question that you're asking me, because I spent 1 year obsessed, trying to heal myself, went from doctors to doctors, and nothing worked. I actually just kept getting worse. It's almost like I was making it worse by trying to force it. And when I just let go and I just went in myself and I started experiencing the depths of who I was, it just all settled into place. Everything went away. I just, without even trying, it just went away. I healed. I healed my whole back pain, the hip pain, the plantar fasciitis. And Andra, not just that, but I talked about the back pain, but I had other things. I used to have recurrent pneumonia. I used to have UTIs. You have GI issues that were just continuously happening. And all of those disappeared. just went away. I didn't even try to heal them, but they all just went away. And this is what made me so curious. I said to myself, what's going on? What is it that before was happening that now is so different? What is it that created so much health within me? And that's why I feel that, when it comes to healing and health, there's something so much deeper than the outer layer that we're focusing on in medicine. And the other question is that, yes, I am still a practicing cardiologist, but I've completely shifted the way that I approach patients. I really have a very holistic approach, and I support patients to not only take care of the, physicality aspect, but to really go within themselves and have a holistic approach to their healing. And then, of course, my husband and I, when we started the HeartQ program and the HeartQ approach, we have our own, processes in place for that. So I'm doing both, but it's really the same in both realms.
So, Dr. Mădălina, because now we're talking about the cardiology part, yes? So I switched. So do you think from your vast experience, do you think that heart problems are symptoms of emotional distress? Is there any link between these two, or they're completely, or heart problems or heart diseases are rooted somewhere else?
Oh my goodness, what an amazing question. And once I recognized this for myself, it's like I see this in every single patient. And you almost want to trace it back. There's a way to trace it back to, and that's where it comes down to, because the physical aspect is the very last layer that happens. But beneath that, there's an ocean that is present that, people haven't tapped into and accessed. And sometimes when people have some kind of a heart problem or anything really, sometimes the focus goes so much on fixing that thing that there is not enough focus on going within myself and asking, where is this coming from? What is the deeper source that this is coming from? And so much of it that I have observed and seen and experienced is coming from unhealed trauma and emotional distress and not knowing patients just not knowing how to deal with that, how to deal with their emotions and actually having a unhealthy way of dealing with it, because this is not something that's really taught, to us. We don't get this kind of teaching. This is not something that people know what to do. But absolutely, I definitely see the link. And this is what I offer to people, to go within and to really discover that, and then to use our heart as the way that we hold space for that process, to do it in a loving, compassionate way, not in a judgmental way that unconsciously tends to happen.
Emotional. How do we develop emotional health? How do we reach a balance away from daily distractions and daily challenges? Because you very beautifully explained in the first part of our conversation how you did it for yourself. But supporting others and advising others is quite a different story, because it's about understanding, their background, their needs, the trauma, because you mentioned trauma, and I'm quite passionate. We spoke about trauma quite a lot on the Healthy Debate Show. So how do we reach this balance, and how do we develop emotional health?
What a great question. Andra, my experience is that when it comes to our overall health, there's a holistic thing that needs to happen. And this is what I tell people too, because when they end up coming to the doctor's office, it's the very last thing that happens, but it's always a calling back to that person's own health. And there is a physical way to approach. Of course, you want to make sure that you're eating healthy and honoring our body and nourishing ourselves with food that is medicine and not that creates inflammation. So that's a big part of it as well. And then there's the element of health and spirituality and emotions. And emotional health is something that I really take people, and I really recommend that you go through a process where when we wake up in the morning, we really sit, we create that sacred space, we create that time to sit with ourselves, to allow ourselves to be without, the tetherings of the world. We always, so often we wake up in the morning and run to the outside and spending all of our attention, outward. It's so important to bring that attention inward and to look at ourselves, to journal, to be within, to feel whatever is coming up, to connect with our hearts, to go on nature walks and to nourish ourselves. And if there is, difficult emotions and trauma trauma that has happened, to heal that. A lot of times we get triggers, we get triggered by people or triggered by experiences, and we live that life in emotional reactivity. And that actually is such a big thing that creates disease, when we're having the emotional reactivity and triggers that happen. And that is actually a portal that is telling us that there's something there. Whenever we have emotional triggers, it's telling us there's something there for us that we need to heal and go inside ourselves and discover what is there inside me that needs to be healed, that I need to pay attention to, that I need to love, that I need to forgive, and then that I need to grow into and grow out of. So there's a depth there, and a lot of times it's something that people are not equipped to do on their own. And so there is a recommendation, and through our program we support people with that. But if there's deeper trauma that has to happen, I definitely recommend that there is support, that they seek for that.
Dr. Mădălina, you made a great point about the connection between body and mind, and even so, but I'm also thinking about some of us that are really struggling to identify when enough is enough. How do we know that it's time for us to stop and start looking inside and start exploring maybe some situations, some events from the past? Because you said you had great knowledge, you were practicing cardiology, you had great experience. I'm sure you were exposed to books and to information that's related to the psychological side of humans. And it took you a while until you found your own feet and you found, the real call. So how do we know when enough is enough? How do we know where to stop? What are some of the signs that are telling us that we're not living a healthy emotional life?
I love this question. And HeartQ, we have this thing that we call the angle of authenticity. And so what happens is that when we are living life not from our heart and not guided by our true authentic self, that's really right for us. When we are living from our heart, we are then living on our own true heart path. There is alignment. There is harmony. There's this inner peace. There's a vitality. There's a passion. So you know when you're there, right? But then what happens is when you're not living in the heart and you're living from the fear and the trauma and the unconscious matrix and the nervous system, then what happens is you create life unconsciously from that place. And that creates a path of misalignment. So you're living away. There's the angle that moves you away from your authentic path. And the greater that you're moving away from your authentic path, the more the suffering that happens. And this is how it shows up in life. What happens in life is a reflection of what's going on that is telling us what's going on inside us. So anything like, hits against us, whether it's physical pain, whether it's a disease, where a problem that happens physically or mentally, depression, anxiety, that shows up. These are the kinds of things that when we're hitting a wall, when we're suffering, when we're unhappy, when we're unfulfilled, when we're trying and it's just not working, you're just not getting to that feeling of fulfillment and vitality. And you're either experiencing physical disease or mental illness, or depression or anxiety. That's a sign. That's a sign that there's something going on within us, that we need to stop moving forward in that direction and just pause and go the other direction, which is inward. So instead of going outward where we've been going, which is not getting us to where we want to be, that we need to pause and really retreat inside and go within ourselves and start exploring, start discovering what's really going on. Who am I really? What is my truth? And that's kind of what happened to me, exactly what happened to me.
One of the things I've noticed throughout my life was the fact that I seem to discover more of myself in relationship with others rather than exploring things on my own. So, for example, in my friendships or in my work relationships, I seem to show up as you would expect, in different ways. And for me, that was a really interesting resource to use to see how I face the world in different instances. And I think, going inside and doing some self-exploring is extremely valuable. And I think everyone should try this every single day. I think we should all have this almost critical analysis, isn't it? That allows us to take a step back and recognize where things can be better or where things don't fit. But I would also think that, using the family you have around you or the friends as a resource for feedback might be a really good indicator or support in helping us understand where are we currently sitting. The reason why I'm saying this is because a lot of the times, our emotions show up as frustration, maybe, or as anger. And sometimes an external view on how we behave and how we show up in the world might help us. What's your take on that? Have you noticed similar things? Do you think this should be an individual journey, maybe separated or less influenced than others, or would you rather integrate this?
I really love this reflection, Andra, because I really feel that there is a blend of two things that is important to happen. Absolutely. And that's the power of the relationships. When we're just sitting on our own, only doing things, we're missing out because we're not seeing the blind spots. We're not seeing the things that are not known to us. There's things in life that we know that we know. There's things that we know we don't know, but we don't know what we don't know. And the way that we get access into those things that we don't know, which is actually what's driving us so much and what's responsible for how our life is being created, is through our relationship to others. And the relationships are serving as our mirrors to ourselves. So yes, absolutely. I really feel that it is so important to have both things happening. There's a space and a time to retreat within, to be with yourself without the distractions, without the tetherings, and just really sit in that solitude and really experience what's happening. What am I feeling? And in addition, it's so important to use our relationships as mirrors, like with our deepest relationships are showing us what we're experiencing, what is happening inside us. So like, when things are happening and I'm getting triggered and I'm upset at this person or that thing, it's actually showing me this is how I'm responding to life. Oh, this is like my pattern and what happens when I don't believe in myself. So our relationship to ourselves is determining our relationship to others. So it's a mirror. It's actually one of the most powerful things we can do is to look at our relationships and how we show up to others is a reflection of how we're showing up to ourselves. What are our perspectives? What are our thoughts and our limitations and our patterns? So I think that combining both of these is so important in that deeper expansion and growth into who we really are.
Dr. Mădălina, let's take a short break, and when we'll be back, we will be continuing our conversation about heart intelligence and emotional health.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Dr. Mădălina, before the break, we were discussing about emotional health, and you made some great suggestions around how to be able to identify when we need a break, how to balance our life, and how to develop emotional health. I want us to go back to heart intelligence, because I know you spend a great amount of time focusing on your methods. So before we get there, tell us a bit more, what is heart intelligence and why is it important?
So good. What a powerful question. So heart intelligence is the intelligence that all of our hearts possess. It's always there. It's always available to us, but we're just not accessing it. And the reason we're not accessing it is because we're unconsciously blocking it with all the unconscious thoughts and patterns and limiting beliefs. So it's creating like a blockage and prevents us from accessing our heart intelligence. And so basically the way that I look at it, there's two forces in life. One is the force that happens when we're just living in our mind, living in our nervous system and driven in life, the force of, driven by fear, by need to be loved and be validated and to be safe. So that's a lot of times what's driving us if you were to like really follow back when people are making their decisions. So that's very different than heart intelligence. Heart intelligence really has to do with what is that deeper truth, that deeper wisdom that exists within each person that really nobody knows for that person. There's no greater teacher, no one that knows that deeper truth and wisdom other than your very own heart. But what happens is that the way that we get access to that, it cannot be through the mind. It cannot be through, I want to know my heart intelligence. It's not like that. It's not through forcing or willing, cannot think our way to it. It's something that we experience by coming out of the mind and really dropping and surrendering into our hearts. And there's a process for that. And when we have to open our heart because we unconsciously close our heart to ourselves. So we have to open our hearts. And then we stay and are present in the energy and the essence and the feeling heart. And then from that space, we can access our heart intelligence, which is something that happens where we can actually feel the answer. We receive the answer. We allow it. It's not like the mind grasps and wants and needs to and forces it. It's something that we receive, that we allow. But first, it's a matter of getting out of the mind, opening the heart, really being in that presence of the heart. When you know that, we've all had those moments where watching the sunset, playing, laughing, being in that heart expansive state. Well, in that space, once you're there, then you can actually feel into and receive your heart intelligence that tells you this is it. And the thing with the heart intelligence is that it's very important to not try to understand it, not try to say, well, why is that the case? Because that just destroys it, makes it go away. It's something that you receive, you welcome. It may not make sense. It may be, it has nothing to do, it cares nothing about, it cares nothing about you validating yourself or safety or what other external standards. The only thing that your heart intelligence is there is for you to feel what is your truth. And when we live life from that place of deep authenticity, guided by our heart intelligence, that's what creates an aligned path. And the heart is interested in that. The heart is only interested in what is it that you love, that you want, that brings out vitality, that brings out that alignment. And it's interesting because now we actually have studies. HeartMath has done a lot of studies on this where, the heart has a very powerful electromagnetic field. It's like 5,000 times a more powerful magnetic field than that of the mind. And you can actually measure the electromagnetic field and you can feel that when we are in our heart, you can measure that when you're in the heart emotions. So compassion and vitality and love. And then your heart field expands. And that's when we're open and that's when we can access this. But when we're in the energy of stress, judgment, criticism, fear, resentment, you can feel how that heart field shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And that's because, stress takes away your energy. When we're in that stress state and running around and feeling all of that, it actually consumes, it takes away your energy, it takes away your vital energy. And that's why one of the reasons you get sick. Whereas when you're in your heart, you actually create energy. It's a creative energy. It brings, you can feel the harmony, the love, the openness, the creativity. And this is, by the way, something that accounts for the flow states that you may hear about. People are in this flow state. It's a very different high compared to that other state that comes from the cortisol and adrenaline. We're in that stress state.
You explained it so beautiful and so nice, and I'm really fascinated about heart intelligence and what you explained about the difference, the electromagnetic field, right? That is significantly higher than your brain. I believe that was the information, right? So correct me because you're the specialist. I'm trying to keep up. But what I'm really curious to find out, Dr. Mădălina, is what do we do when life is not great? What do we do when we're feeling miserable? What do we do when, you're crippled with anxiety? Because then it becomes a bit harder to identify even your emotions or to feel the joy that expands your heart. What do we do then?
This is exactly what happened to me way back 10 years ago when I couldn't get my back healed, when I was in so much pain and I was stuck in these energies of depression and just deep unhappiness. And like I was so miserable. And that's exactly what happened. So what happened to me is now when I look back, it's called the Kensho moments. Whenever we're in that energy and in that state, that is actually the calling of our heart. When that means that whatever we're experiencing, we are so departed and so disconnected from our true self, our path, our healing. That is actually our calling of our heart asking us to journey back. And that journey is not necessarily an easy journey because there is things that need to be healed, like trauma that hasn't been accessed, and also these mental patterns, these emotional patterns that are, we've basically acquired, from family, generational things that happens over the years. So there's all of that needs to be healed. That's not something we can just, avoid and connect to our hearts. It doesn't work that way. That when all of that is there, it actually creates a wall around our heart. We can't really access and go into our hearts. So first we need to open to that, face that, feel that, experience that, heal all of this. And only then can we actually then connect to the expansiveness of who we really are inside. And that's what I needed to do. I realized, for instance, let me just give you an example from me. My greatest patterns were, so I was workaholism, overachiever, overdoer, perfectionist, yes sayer, and people pleaser. But if you were to look at these were the things that I was living in. But if you were to look at it, like my overachieving is because I had to do enough in order to feel enough. I had to work so much so I can say to myself, okay, now I'm worthy of pleasure and love. And, I had to please everyone because then I'll be loved, because I didn't have that self-love. And I didn't even know that all of this stuff was happening. I had no idea because I never really explored all of that. So that's what I call, looking at the outward surface things that are going on and using them as a way to trace ourselves back to ourselves. And, we do need help because we're used to living life in this way and that way. And Einstein, I love Einstein quote, he says, you cannot solve the problem with the same consciousness that created it. So here we are in the state of whatever it is we're experiencing. For us with that consciousness that created that state, how can we then heal ourselves like that? It doesn't work that way. We need to expand our consciousness. We need to open up to other possibilities and availability and get that help in different ways and get the support. And then we can actually, really experience the healing that our hearts are calling us into.
Dr. Mădălina, please give us some details about the HeartQ method. How does it work? As you so well explained the passion for it and what's behind it, but how does it actually work?
Excellent. I love this. This is really, when we looked at, I looked at my journey and we had all these experiences and I went through I basically explored everything. When I realized that I was living life from unconscious programming and the nervous system, then I said to myself, I really want to explore, how do I heal? Who am I? And all of that. So I went through the realms of so many different modalities in the realms of consciousness and energy healing and psychology and science. From all of that is how we came up with the HeartQ method based on, years and years of different experiences. And we put it all together in the HeartQ method. And there's basically 4 pillars to this. And the very first pillar really has to do with heart awareness. It's a process of, whatever it is that you're experiencing, it's a process of becoming aware, expanding our awareness to what is really going on. We think we know what's going on. We think this is how I am. This is my problem, but there's so much more. So the first step is expanding our awareness. Okay, what is it that I think I am that I'm not? What are my unconscious patterns that I'm living from? What are my limiting beliefs? How are these triggers that I'm living in actually preventing me from being and more of who I am? So there's this awareness that happens when we turn the lights on and recognize all of these things that we were unconscious of, that we were living from our life. So that's the first part. The second pillar is that of expression. Now, once we have an awareness, like when I had the awareness, oh my God, I realize now the reason I had to do so much and I had to do enough to feel enough. Well, it's not enough to just have that awareness, because that's just at mind level. We need to bring it in. We need to feel it. We need to express it. We need to release it. So that's the second part, is like taking what we're aware and really, really bringing it into our body, feeling it, expressing it, releasing it. There's a somatic process to that. Then the third part is, now that I recognize, oh, okay, I'm not this pattern that I thought I was. Oh, okay, I was living life in these negative thoughts, these negative beliefs that they're not true. Then the third part is, then let's reconnect. We reconnect now to our deepest truth. We reconnect to our heart. So if that limiting belief that I thought was true is not true, then what is actually true? So the third pillar has to do with coming and connecting with the truth, with the wholeness that is within us. There's a process for that, and it's not something we think, it's something that we feel and expand into and experience. And then the fourth part is really, once you are connecting to your heart, now the fourth part is creating life from our heart. No longer, creating life from unconsciously old habits and old patterns and autonomic based ways of living, but now really consciously, intentionally living life from our heart in the big picture, with big decisions and moment to moment. Something's coming up and I'm reacting. Oh, wait a minute. That's my old habit coming in. Okay, what is really true for me right now? And I feel that and I express that. So that's really the 4 steps. Number 1 is conscious awareness. Number 2 is expression, feeling. Number 3 is reconnecting to our heart to discover the truth. And number 4 is heart-aligned action.
Dr. Mădălina, after a break, I would like you to, if possible, provide us some examples of your work with your patients, because you mentioned quite close to the beginning of our conversation that you have a bit of a different approach now since you've developed the HeartQ method. So we'll take a short break and then we're back with Dr. Mădălina to discuss heart intelligence and HeartQ method.
The station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio. The station that makes you feel good.
And we're back with Dr. Mădălina. Please give us some examples of the work you've done with some of your patients. Do you have any interesting situations where healing happened faster because of this holistic approach, or some insights of how some of the heart issues, for example, slowly disappear due to this approach, or on the contrary, when maybe things didn't work out as planned, because that's also quite a good learning point, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So I was saying earlier that a lot of times when people are showing up in my office with heart problems, they're there. And what's really happening, even though it's not really being seen or felt, is that it's actually their hearts asking them to come back to themselves. That's really what's happening. And it's really important to, what I do is, okay, we take care of the problem, of course. We got to take care of whatever the heart issue is. We take care of that. But then we don't want to just focus on that, external fixing. We want to bring then the attention and the focus inward. What is the deeper message? So for instance, I'll give you an example of a patient that I saw in the office, not too long ago. I had seen this patient. He came in just, heart racing episodes. He was having these arrhythmias, having high blood pressure, just all these things that were happening with heart rhythm and high blood pressure and, diabetes and, seeking, what's going on. So I took care of all the physical problems. And then after we took care and figured out, okay, what needs to be done for this and what are the tests and what are some of the medications we consider, then I really and I can feel into people how ready they are to receive, I can feel that. So then what I do is I always open up the conversation to, number one, how can we have a heart healthy life. And very, like I was saying earlier, so important is just how we honor our bodies. What are we exercising? What are we eating? Are we eating nutritious food like, green stuff, or are we eating inflammatory food, which is like all the processed food? But then there is something that, we felt into, that I helped him to explore, that really his heart was asking, which is, this particular patient is so busy doing everything for everyone. There was really never a moment for him. He never took any time for himself. Everything was about everyone else. So he was running on this treadmill, trying to do everything for everyone, but meanwhile, completely empty and depleted inside. So that was basically that was like the heart expressing the stress that was being felt, because that lack of him really honoring himself and honoring his heart and like really taking and care, that self-care. So then my recommendation and our discussion is how important it was to put ourselves first, not last. A lot of times, I'll get to me if I get to at the end of my task list. And so we had to have a paradigm shift, and really you are number one. So what does that mean? What does it mean when we make ourselves number one? And so then all these things that happen about the self-care and honoring and taking time for self, meditating, emotional exploring, journaling, and all of those things that had to happen. And it was so interesting because he actually took all my advice and all of that to his heart. And when he came back a few weeks later, what was interesting is that his blood pressure had completely normalized. So we completely got him off all the blood pressure medications. All the palpitations that were happening before completely went away. And this nervousness, he had lost weight, like 10 pounds weight. And this nervousness, this anxiety that he was experiencing really was just the incessant mind speaking and the belief. He brought himself into this himself. He brought himself into his heart, and he had created these, habits, because we have to create those healthy habits. And he was literally crying. Here's a man just crying, saying, oh my God, I have my life back. I have myself back. And now he had instituted all these practices in his day that was there to basically honor himself and honor his life. And that's just one example of something that, we experienced recently.
It's really fascinating that the connection between body, in this case heart, and the mind. And it's so fascinating, the fact that sometimes we go through life waiting for just the perfect moment, for just a perfect person that will show up for us in a way that will be supportive and empathetic, and not just look at us as another number, patient number 5 or patient number 7, and look at how individual, how interesting we are and how individual we are, and look at us from a holistic approach rather than the doctor-patient typical relationship. And I think, this opens up a really good conversation about the future of the medicine and how it should be, and how important it is to, for example, counselors or psychologists to recommend physical health specialists or well-being specialists or alternative medicine specialists when they approach the healing of a patient, and vice versa. So hopefully this will maybe in 5-10 years time we'll see a switch in the paradigm, and people will understand that we're complex human beings living in complex environments, and there is this need to maybe stop separating fields and start having a more holistic approach to health. I know we're getting very close to the end of our conversation, Dr. Mădălina, but I really want us to summarize and to look at 3-5 tips that can help us, that we can apply today and can help us focus on heart health and emotional health, and will help us almost introduce ourselves into Heart Q method.
Wonderful, Andra. Thank you so much. It's been really wonderful here having this space with you and connecting. And, if I were to say what are the most important messages, is number one is it's going to sound weird, but being willing to be wrong. the way that we think we are, who we think we are, the way that we think we are, what we think the truth is, to be open to consider, is that really true? Is that really so? Because there is so much more. I used to believe this is who I am and this is my life and I am like this and I am like that and that's it. And when we do that, we become set in those ways. But there's this invitation that I have for everyone to just really let that go and consider there is so much more to who we are as a human being. And when we're living from our hearts, there's such an expanded way to be that is actually ever changing and ever shifting. So that's my first invitation to people, to really consider that there's so much more that we are, that it's hard to define. Number two, my second takeaway message is that whenever we're having the most difficult life moments, a midlife crisis, some kind of crisis, whatever that is, whether it's a physical crisis, an anxiety crisis, an emotional crisis, that it is difficult, it is painful. And look at that as life asking you, wow, something here is for me to go inside and to heal. Because when that's happening, it means that whatever it is that we've been living so far is taking us away from ourselves. And we're not aligned with our truth. We're not aligned with our heart. So whenever that's happening, my invitation is to just, not with judgment or anything like that, but to just use that as a portal to go within ourselves, to discover what is that healing that I need to do? What is it that life is inviting me into that I'm not in alignment? I'm not living in alignment. And that's why this is happening. And look at that as a way to go within ourselves, heal, and really discover what is our truth? What is my healing? What is my purpose? And really shift gears there. So that's my second. And the third one is, everybody's so busy in life. Like everybody's running around and busy. And, people say, I just don't have time. I used to have the same thing. It's a limiting belief. I don't have time. But if we're running around and living life in that rushed energy, that's a stress energy. What I invite people is find that time, make that time for yourself, create that space. Because, before we show up to the world and to others, really to show up to ourselves, fill our cup. What does it mean to fill my cup? What do I need to do for me so I can feel good? What is it that I need to heal? What is it that I need to do in the morning for me so that I can fill my cup before I go around filling other people's cups? So this is my invitation. And really, I believe and I feel that there is not one person on this planet that doesn't have this issue. We're all born as pure love in our hearts, but then stuff happens when we're young. Stuff happens, whether it's, unconscious patternings, experiences, trauma, and we get separated from the heart. We go to the mind because it's safer. And so my invitation is to consider, what would it be like? What would it be like for you to open yourselves to drop into your heart? What would life be like to live from your heart, from the consciousness of your heart and from the intelligence of the heart? And how much more expansive and vital and peaceful and harmonious and loving it would be to have an experience when we live life from our hearts.
Dr. Mădălina, for sure, I'll take I've taken some really good learnings from our conversation. I definitely need to be a bit more observant and take that step back and analyze a bit more how I live every day, and maybe try to start the day, as you said, with something that's for myself, fill my own cup so then I can focus on others. So thank you so much for coming on today. I really want our listeners to get in touch with you and discuss HeartQ method and see how they can improve their lives. So please give us some details about your contact, maybe social media links, anything that can help us find you online.
Yes, thank you so much, Andra. And the best thing to do is to go to the website, because everything is on our website. It's heartq.com. And that's where we have all the links to the social media and to the programs that we have and our email. And we have a lot of stuff there that is really to take people back to their hearts. The program that we're actually just about to bring out right now, it's called Unleash Your Heart. And it's a live experience and combined with an online program where we actually take people through this exact step of, number one, uncovering how people have been living life, from the unconscious way of living, from the stress pathways, and really turning the lights on and being held in a loving container. Second part being, okay, then if I'm not all those things, who am I really? And that's our heart. And there's a process for us to experience. What does it mean, like who I am? And number three is, now how do I create my life from this place? And especially with the New Year's coming up and all the resolutions people always create and never really reach, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. And that's what we go into in that third part of this program called Unleash Your Heart. So yeah, and if this is resonating with you and this is something that you're aligned and feeling pulled into, I would be happy to support people on that journey. And you can find us at heartq.com.
Dr. Mădălina, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. I wish you all the best with your new program, and I hope you'll come back next year to tell us more about the program.